Hello, my name is John Storm, and this is my first audio book in the series of Which is Wisdom. The specific topic is Spellbreaker, or alternately titled Two-Dimensional Thinking, or Look What They've Done to Your Mind. I wrote this article to try to explain what has happened to your brain and why you have such a difficult time trying to get past anything higher than two-dimensional thinking. It won't be easy, as it's rather involved, and for those of you who picture everything that doesn't fit into your lopsided little paradigm as, quote, conspiracy theory, it'll be a total waste of time, and you're probably missing American Idol or some other inane distraction that you could be wasting your finite lifetime watching and drooling over. It sounds very offensive, and you should be deeply offended. But if you can get through this, you'll have a first-rate idea of who and what you should really be offended with. I don't really mean to insult you. I'm making the effort to pull you out of that pit that was dug for you, and I need you to see for yourselves who your enemies really are. Along all of those various conspiracy theories, you may first want to consider the documented scientific and medical facts about the effects of fluoride. It is not a theory. There is so much clinical data on this stuff that it is amazing that so many of you think it's lunatic fringe conspiracy theory. I won't bother here to repeat all of the facts on this topic. Like, do you know what the prime ingredient of rat poison is? Do you understand why your children, if your children eat a pea-sized portion of their fluoride toothpaste, you should call poison control? All right, there's more to this than just theory, but you're not seeing it. Okay, how you became so programmed and conditioned that someone has mentioned it to you, or you may have read about its effects in medical school, off the toothpaste tube, or in studying pharmaceuticals, and yet you'll insist upon believing that it is in your public water system for the good of your children's teeth. That is a well-documented lie, but you are conditioned to ignore that simple fact, and now you'll even pay for bottled water that has fluoride included in it to get its dubious health benefits. This article is not about theories of any sort, and it's not about fluoride. It's about what happened to your mind and how all of us supposedly evolved, sophisticated, thinking creatures could let things get this bad, and how we can begin to break these metaphorical chains of darkness and rise above this devolving disaster. Even I hardly know where to begin with this. First, let's start with our most inaccurately named educational system. You may believe you have been educated in the finest schools in the world. And if you're an American, that may have been true at one time, when we had the highest educational skills per capita than any other country in the world at its time. But that was a long time before most of you were born. Presently, for all of our inordinately expensive educational system, bush babies in Kenya score higher on SATs than the average American student of the same age group. We presently rank behind third world countries in education. There is a very scientific and rational reason for this. It is no conspiracy theory. Let's examine what is wrong about this system at its most basic level and see exactly why it fails us so. We can explore all sorts of theories of higher education and social structures and still miss the elephant in the classroom. To begin with, you learned very, very little in all of your years in this educational system. You may disagree with that statement, but you'd be wrong. And there's a very valid reason why you wouldn't even see it as obvious as it is. This system was designed not to teach you, but to indoctrinate you. You weren't taught how to learn, but how to memorize data and regurgitate it back on demand in your pop quizzes and tests. You might want to argue that you devoured volumes upon volumes of knowledge in 12 or more years of continuing education, but you'd still be wrong. You were made to memorize pages and pages of deliberate propaganda, made to believe those were facts. Everything about your indoctrination has been designed deliberately to make you left-brained to the full exclusion of any right brain activity. Let's take a look at a few good examples of what I'm talking about here. We obviously can't cover them all, but I can give you some main points that everybody can relate to. If you are an older citizen, senior citizen like myself, you may remember in grade school as a child that if you were left-handed, they would try to encourage you to be right-handed. I remember how hard they tried that with my left-handed sister. Fact, the left hemisphere of your brain controls the right side of our bodies and vice versa. If you are right-hand dominant, then you are already left brain dominant and easily kept that way, as opposed to encouraging you to make full use of both hemispheres. The left half processes math, language, schools, and spatial mechanics. The right half is the creative and abstract or even subconscious thought processes like dreaming and much more. It is where you connect the things on a deeper and even artistic level. Nobody in this educational system is going to be encouraged to become a starving artist or a musician. No. If you're going to have any goals at all in this institution, they will encourage you to try to learn some trade that you can support your families with, take up music or art as a hobby. If they show any signs, or if you show any signs of artistic or right-brained inclinations, you are singled out as an oddball or a misfit and derided by your peers until you toe the line with the rest of the left-brain automatons. That is our system, and most of you will painfully remember exactly this fact about your school years. When they teach you in this fashion, you are told that Columbus discovered America in 1492. You did not learn that because it is not true. Hard facts do not support this statement. There are no artifacts or evidence that supports that there were any Italians, Portuguese, or Spaniards in America beyond a few short centuries ago. But all evidence and even historical writings show that someone has been here even to 10,000 years or more before Columbus was ever even born. They called them Indians, as the documented history describes as having greeted him as he found his way here in 1492. But you were never taught to make that connection. It was insisted that you buy into the propaganda, and not to think about it for yourself on your own terms. When you were given a test for what you learned that semester or that year in school, they asked you the question, who discovered America and when? And if you answered anything but Columbus in 1492, you failed that question. You could have failed that test for all the other little loaded things they put in it, and you repeated that grade, or your GPA, your grade point average, dropped far enough to keep you from being accepted in the very best colleges later on and getting any of the best jobs. The mind zombies that mindlessly repeated the propaganda became the captains of politics and industry in America in your place. And there's a reason somebody wanted them there. It wasn't an accident or chance that kept you from your dreams. It was by design. Once upon a time, some of the world's best thinkers came from here and even abroad, as in only a little over a century, the whole world saw great leaps in science, arts, and technology, and then, zip, back to mental mediocrity in the general populace. Surely you understand that your masters know that Columbus did not in fact discover anything. There's a real reason why it serves them to mislead you with this propaganda. You do not consider the Native Americans in this story. You, because of your indoctrination, you are far more inclined to see them as savage or subhuman non-entities relegated to reservations for their own good and well-being so that a superior species and races can claim the land and, quote, make it great. All they did was hunt buffalo and live in teepees anyway. When given that propaganda as fact, in using the facts, there are few other conclusions that your mind could come to, so you ignore the discrepancy, and this serves your master's interests. But it mentally hobbles you. It doesn't work out so nice for the natives either. But you're only trained to use half of your available mind. So as long as they are out of your direct line of sight, their plight becomes a non-issue. Or consider a century or so later than that in American history with the Thanksgiving propaganda taught in all of our schools that your children take a part in plays and reenactments. In this, they are learning as if firsthand about all of the love and respect and sharing between whites and Indians in the first Thanksgiving. Is it true or even realistic? No. But what it is, what someone insists that you believe is a fact. No mention at all is ever made how those loving white Christian souls purposely sent those Indians home with blankets infected with smallpox to decimate their numbers and take their land without a fight. But there are documents and diaries of the day to support that, but nobody is allowed to learn the truth unless you take the time and effort to dig it out of the lesser-known tomes of education for yourself. The overwhelming majority of you have no reason at all, by right of your straight A's in this educational system, to even suspect or even want to look this up. You learned nothing. You were indoctrinated in propaganda to serve a more learned master than yourselves. Let's take a look at yet another fine example of two-dimensional thinking in even what is taught as religious instruction versus hard sciences. Religion in America is believing exactly what you were told to believe out of a single book. Christianity is across America 3,000 miles wide and only about a quarter-inch deep. However well written and full of tidbits of fine wisdom in that book, you're taught to believe that a cranky old white man sitting on a throne in the clouds called heaven has created man in his image and woman as a second-class citizen or even property, and the whole world in exactly 6 days. Any variation of thought on this theme is considered heresy and punishable by a horrible death and consigned to an eternal hell. End of story. And that the only other school of thought is considered, quote, hard science, or specifically Darwinism, and demands that in the beginning there was nothing, and it exploded, and then it became everything, and life happened accidentally after that over billions upon billions of years. As with Columbus, if you do not buy into this preposterous presumption, you will fail miserably and never be considered as proper company among all of the intelligent apes in the finer institutions of higher education and thought. How blisteringly far from the truth is that? I can tear that theory of evolution, which is not taught as theory, but taught as if it were proven fact, to shreds on many, many levels. Many professors and learned men do contend with this academic drivel, but they never get to hold any higher positions in the system and often lose their doctorates for doing so and get treated as eccentrics or lunatic fringe. I'd waste a lot of time going over all of those discrepancies here, but another man named Lloyd Pye, P-Y-E, has done an excellent presentation on the abnormalities of fossil record evidence that does not support the common academic hypothesis entitled, "Everything you know is wrong." You can research this on YouTube. Just look up the words and you'll find something on it. He has a very, very interesting presentation. He's got information, he's got facts presented to you clearly, concisely, in a way that nobody has ever presented them to you before. The spell is breaking. Now, while I do not agree with him on every single point, I will endorse that what he shows you in this is truer than any of the crap the Darwinists feed you about their own religion of faith and presumption as, quote, hard science. But I'm doing this for you to talk about what had happened to your minds and to tie it in with all the other stuff. It would be a learning experience, in fact, just to get you to examine the glaring facts in our fossil record about your brains and mine. First, I'd like to point out that in any educational system we currently have, there are basically only two schools of thought are presented, and that neither of them teach or anything or require students to weigh and think them out, but insist they memorize the propaganda as if it were known facts. You are taught as a creationist or as a Darwinist. Nothing else is even given enough of a nod to even be slightly memorable to us here. The two-party system of thought should be setting off alarm bells in your mind right about now as to there's a pattern here. There's a very similar and readable and recognizable pattern about what's going on with this stuff. As none of us here were around to actually witness and record what really happened, we are forced to either take their words as gospel of the educational potentates of our system, or conversely, we can consider them in the light of the fossil records and hard evidences in order to find some semblance of, quote, hard science. There are even the writings of the day to consider as to what the people closest to that time thought about those things. The fossil records for all of the millions of years of evidence of evolution or what has gone on in this world we have found in the last 140 plus years of collecting does not show any evidence of slow mutations from one or more species to another. Even now, they are only just discovering that Neanderthals were not the preceding ancestors of Cro-Magnons. Darwinists used to attribute this to not having found the, quote, missing link between the two of us. They never will, because Neanderthals are genetically different and we did not come from them, for one. For two, there would have to be several mutations in between these species to account for all of the differences, and yet something is far, far more glaring error is readily recognizable in the, quote, theory that we evolved naturally to the state of Homo sapiens in this way as we are, in fact, today. Can you guess this point? If not, it is because you were indoctrinated to ignore this fact. The giant leap in brain capacity is one of them. But more than even that is, there are no other creatures known on the face of this planet that evolved a brain that is 10 times what they are using only a mere fraction of. Hard science, the use of magnetic resonance imaging, electroencephalograms, and a host of other measuring devices show that we are barely using 1/10 of our brain capacity. Dolphins have brains our size and approximately our complexity of development, but they use 100% of their brains. Chimps that we are considered 99% DNA compatible with use 100% of their limited brain capacities. But humans have about 90% of that mass that has no recordable activity going on in it at all. The exceptions to this are found only in patients that have lost a portion due to injury or trauma or something, and then those functions somehow get moved to light up portions we normally don't see lit up. By Darwinist teaching alone, this is ridiculous to assume that any creature mutates and evolves organs they do not presently have a use for. It is more reasonable to assume that these brains once were used to capacity at some time, and that somehow, possibly from genetic tampering, had 90% of them genetically switched off from the rest. Who could have done such a thing? There are ancient records in Sumeria that suggest, or even more suggest, that it was the Anunnaki. The Hindus, the Vedas, and that they have other things that say similar things. They say there was people here that was using all of this stuff. The Mayans, the Aztec, they know of it. There is recorded history that says this stuff has been going on. Don't believe them? Look at the architecture, the stuff they build that you cannot do today. Okay? The artifacts do not fit the accepted theory or are poo-pooed as religious mythology, but they actually better fit the hard evidence than the known propaganda. Both of the only schools of thought are sadly short of anything we can honestly call factual or hard sciences, but we're in fact doctrinated into believing them and carrying their glaring errors around in our minds as if they were hard facts. And then you wonder why our universe does not make sense to us, as if it was a great mystery. Somebody wants you to believe very much in great mysteries, but doesn't want you to learn your way to finding out what it really means. They are not illuminating anyone, they are mystifying you. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Their agenda requires that the inconsistencies in thought remain forever a mystery to you, and that you be disconnected from ever realizing your own true power over your own destiny. I don't even need to have a clue as to what you may believe that destiny to be. The real issue is that they want you disconnected from that so that they can plug into it all first. You will find this to be true on many, many levels. It is never only one thing or just another. It is very multidimensional in nature because nature is multidimensional. It is not only metaphysical as it is metaphorical, it is even mathematical. There is a pattern, as above, so below, and so on. You are either a creationist or an evolutionist, a Democrat or a Republican, a believer or a heretic, going to heaven or going to hell. You are black, you are white, you are male or you're female, you're wholly right or you're wholly wrong, you're gay or you're straight, liberal or conservative, ad nauseum. Everything is taught as two-dimensional thought. But we understand that we live in a three-dimensional world, and quantum physicists understand that it may be as much as 10 or more. But whoever listens to those brain cases anyway? The fact is we are programmed to ignore the facts in favor of a prescribed propaganda is very relevant to the state of our present world paradigm. There has always been much more than simple black and white, or even adding shades of gray to the picture does not fill out the simple truth of the fuller spectrum of hard science and reality. But why is it we can only rarely incorporate that total picture into our perceptions of reality? Even a naturalist understands that in nature it has more genders than strictly male or female. Things produce in different ways than that. But if anyone else considers this, they are thought of to be as aberrant or freakish. It's hard to see how lobotomized your religions, educations, and social structures have truly made you. And then there's still television to consider. If you didn't see it happen on TV, then it couldn't be true. Forgetting that very, very little of what is programmed as reality TV is even remotely true. But the lobotomized left-brain masses are only dimly aware that anything they'd consider as intelligent life is found outside of their closed, cut off, and stunted little minds. Pity the fools. Via the internet, you're seeing a pattern of thoughts on cycles and frequencies on all levels. One is running out of phase and a higher pattern is coming into phase. And even in all of those races and cultures that I've befriended and shared thoughts and perceptions with, I am seeing awakening souls and minds. I can see the effects of this, and it's not just me. I don't see any of them as just this or just that, black or white. I am checking out a unique panorama in livid technicolor, and one I usually enjoy revisiting. It has just become impossible for me to believe that murdering them or their kin for any reason is going to somehow be right or just or a good thing in any way. Nor should I be doing any kind of business or delegating my authority to or with those that apply their power to doing just such an evil thing in my name. I don't think anyone has to be American to understand that, because I know of so many others who have shown every indication of agreeing with me that this is so. I'm trying to think of a universal word for duh. I wish I could just blow a whistle and get everyone to stop and leave each other the fuck alone and just sort it all out in your own communities and nations. I mean, with all of the woe and pain and tragic losses, if everyone just stopped making it a death sentence to be something else and work on our own community infrastructure, unhindered by outsiders, whoever we are, it's really not too much to ask. We all answer to the Almighty in whatever way we name our concepts of someone greater than all of us. The very best days in any of our lives are always when we connect with that power on some sort of profound levels. Nobody should come between you and that connection. It is yours. It is personal. It is not your religion. It is your relationship. I know that no matter how you name anything, that you are also one of a multitude of children of an infinitely diverse, ultimate creator God. The more souls that light up with this information and illumination and brightness, the more illumined and enlightened than the Illuminati you become, the sooner we all reach a tipping point where we shift more fully into that higher frequency, vibration, or whatever level or cycle your culture calls it. These are indeed dark times and looking to get much worse. I already know most of that, but I'm not defeated yet. It doesn't take a majority of true light sources to dispel a great deal of darkness. I've seen lights and I've seen arc lamps out there. As I've said, you can take that on multiple levels and it will still add up the same way for you. The truth is that you have put entirely too much stock in an entirely corrupting system. I mean, year after year or every 4 years, wow, these Democrats have led us astray. They've done awful things. Let's vote for the other guy. Then you vote for the other guy and find out he's been lying to you. And you find out, wow, this Republican fella gone and really screwed up everything. Let's vote for the other guy. And you've been doing this and doing this and doing this. But see, I'm not just speaking of your politics. I'm also speaking of your education, your religion, your false science, commercial banksters, politicians, clerics, or whatever. The light will always show it for exactly what it is. And once you've seen that for yourselves, you can never go back into the matrix and continue as its puppet. Its spell on you is forever broken. I am your Morpheus, bringing you the red pill and changing your life and showing you, just letting you, not just showing you, I'm allowing you to see for yourself how deep that rabbit hole goes down, dear Alice. I am Merlin here, bringing about my next Arthur, and you are Arthur. I am not here to lead anybody. I'm here to give you weapons, to give you tools, to give you flashlights, to do for yourselves what this paradigm and these evil, elite, warlock, Luciferian paradigm will never do for you. They have never. Historically speaking, you can see that for yourself. You can research that for yourself. You can look it up. You don't have to take my word for anything, and you shouldn't take anyone's word for anything. You've been buffaloed for generations already. How much longer do you want to continue in the darkness? But the darkness is being broken, brothers and sisters. And I can say this for a fact. You can believe this any way you want to make it fit. The math comes out the same, that one of many ways, one way or another, or a great many other ways, we are very likely to be seeing each other anew in a brighter paradigm before all of this is through. And personally, I'm loving that idea.